You know, a lot of people praise the Hammershot family of blasters for being practical one-handed springers. In fact, they were some of the first practical one-handed springers. You could easily prime them back like that with one hand, doesn't matter which one, and of course, they hit pretty good ranges and can be modified to hell and back. Not that I can see a practical reason to use a blaster one-handed. In fact, I still can to this day, unless you're like me and you're using a big, huge shield to go with it. But maybe the reason why the Hammershot never really caught my attention as a good one-handed blaster is because this thing existed. Let me welcome you to Tag Back, the show where every week we take a look at a blaster from the past to see what it could offer us today in the present. And this time, we're looking at something that's not really all that old, but was instantly forgotten by basically everyone, to the point where Bobo hated it so much he said it was absolute garbage, and to this day, can't get past it. And yet, this was the first blaster I ever did any kind of Nerf-related video on, and I wanted to know why everybody hated this blaster. And I couldn't quite figure it out, because mine's awesome. A quick refresher for those of you who don't know what this thing is. This is the Nerf Vortex Diatron, or Diatron as I called it. Dia? It made sense to me at the time, but whatever. Apparently it's Diatron. Not that I care. What this was a one-handed, lever-primed, 10-disc internal magazine shotgun. This shoots 2 discs at once, and it holds 10 of them, or for the savvy among you, it actually holds 12, because once you pack this magazine full of discs and prime it once, it gives you, obviously, spaces to insert 2 more, giving you a 10 plus 2, or effectively 6 shots. But it's a disc-based shotgun, and that does a lot for us, because discs are kind of wild and unpredictable, but are very, very good at, close to mid-range. And while this thing is kind of awkward with its weird prime like that you have to complete every single time, it does, in fact, they're gone. I can't even, they roll out of my hands. They're very unpredictable, and that's very good to have in something like this. I say this with no hyperbole. This thing has gotten more tags at Dart Wars than any other blaster I ever owned. I couldn't do anything without this blaster. It's just phenomenal. A lot of the reasons people don't like this thing is because it's got locks everywhere. When you first get it out of the box, it doesn't let you do anything because of all the locks. And I find it really hypocritical that people love the Hammershot because of all the modification potential it has, but they hate the Diatron because they don't want to mod it to make it work good. If you think like that, I hate you. Yes, a ton of locks, but what can you do once the locks have been removed? Yeah, it's got that awkward side lever prime thing, but once you remove those locks, this blaster allows you to use it one-handed. Now, it is relegated to being basically right-handed. I'm almost certain it would be awkward to tilt the thing like this and try to one-hand prime it. Not that left-handed people can't prime something right-handed, mind you, but this thing is awesome. So all you have to do is prime it against your body like that, and you can do it effortlessly. It doesn't take any time or any thought whatsoever to make this thing awesome. And did I mention that it's a disc-based shotgun? I keep feeling like I have to remind you about that, because once you move the torsion spring like you do with every Vortex blaster, you get a good amount of power out of this thing. It can hit 70 feet, no problem whatsoever, and that's 2 discs at a time, 70 feet. 2 discs! You're gonna probably hit somebody with that. You're definitely gonna hit them if they're within 35, 40 feet. No problem whatsoever. You can't dodge 2 discs. It just doesn't happen. They kinda go in one of them goes a little bit sharper than the other, but they still stick together in a pretty decent footprint. I love it. I absolutely love this thing. I don't know what else, I don't know how I'm gonna fill an entire video about the Diatron, but I've never really had a chance to talk about how awesome this thing was. So it's a little awkward looking. Yeah, it's big, but it's not that big. For it has empty plastic right here. If it was really bothering you, you could take a bandsaw and cut this entire section off and not have to worry about anything. Size-wise, it's about the same size. Ironic. Hammer shot. It's not that big, and that was a common criticism of this thing in every single review I saw. Every review criticized how big this thing was, and yet look! You can see why I'm a little angry. This thing got a bad rap for absolutely no reason whatsoever, and I never understood it. If you're complaining about locks in a blaster, where the hell were you with the Strife? Oh right, everybody complained about that. Everybody complained about the original Strife jamming constantly because of the dart sensor thing in there. Everybody removed it. Yeah, this is a little bit more difficult to do that. And in fact, it's pretty difficult on a scale of 1 to holy crap, it's about a 7. But still, people just ripped it apart. Known modders were ripping this thing apart because of some locks. And yet, all you had to do was remove them, and you got one of the best blasters ever. While I may prefer something like the Fuse Fire because it's so much easier to reload on the fly, with this and the Vigilon, you have to open this thing back up, you have a chance of your discs falling out, and you have to carefully place discs back in here, and if it's full of discs, that makes it even worse, because then you have to kind of wedge them in there, and it's really difficult to do. The Fuse Fire doesn't have that problem, because you just put another disc in there, prime it's good to go, and put another disc in there. This is a lot quicker to stay in the fight with, but this was a more effective blaster. And honestly, I don't know where I'd be in Nerf if I didn't have this thing. I've never painted this. This is my original Diatron. I picked it up for full price from probably Target, and I've never looked back. There were some good blasters in the Vortex line, but if any of them, Pyragon, whatever, Vigilon, Proton, Praxis, it didn't matter to me. This was the best blaster in my mind. I could use it one-handed effortlessly. Maybe it's easier for fat people, I'm not quite sure, because I just, bam, done. I don't really want to dry fire it right now. And I'm not sure how good that was for skinny people, because I've never seen anybody else use this thing. I've seen maybe 1 or 2 people at Dart Wars and explain, oh my god, it's the best blaster ever, you just have to remove the locks. But nobody could do it. They weren't modders. People who went to Dart Wars weren't exactly modders. So this thing probably wasn't that good for normal consumers. It worked, but it was annoying. But modders were also giving it a hard time because it had locks in it. It was dumb, and I just never understood it. The Diatron, probably the best blaster I've ever owned. I might say that a lot, and in fact, if you ask me tomorrow, or you put, didn't you say this was the best blaster you've ever owned? Probably. But the reason why I wanted to choose this blaster right here is because I had a story to tell with this thing. It helped me so much. This thing has eliminated entire teams. There was a time at Dart Wars where they kind of let me modify the arena, and so what I did is I stacked all these boxes in the middle of the arena, basically split the arena in two with a big wall and some scattered cover, but there wasn't really enough. And at the start of the match, I just ran down the left side of it, nobody was there, came up behind all of them and shot all of them, and I could get 2 people out per prime, and you can't dodge it. And again, it's a one-handed use. I mean, if you want to slam fire the thing, yeah, you just go like this. In fact, with the whole thing removed, if you have this open and you fire it, it closes on you. But it's awesome. This is going to be the worst episode of Tag Back ever because I could just gush about this thing. I'm going to have to edit all this down. But that just shows you how good this blaster was to me. If you have one, I don't have a guide for doing it right now. I need another one. I don't have a guide for removing the locks out of it, but every single lock is useless. I mean, once that's done, there's nothing holding that in. It's kind of hard to do it without the, there we go. There's nothing holding this on, there's no lock back in here, all that stuff's been removed, and the torsion spring was moved over to the, like, I think probably one of these screw posts inside there. And you can see this thing is all sorts of chewed up, and it's been dry fired, it's been put through hell and back, and it works fine. I've used this probably longer than any other blaster at Dart Wars. There we go. And I love it. The freaking Diatron, man. I knew this was gonna happen. I had to talk about this thing, and this was my excuse to do it. I love the fuse fire. Overall, I think it was a better blaster, just because of how effortless it was for me to stick in the fight and keep people pinned down with this thing, and it served me really well, although it was kind of late. I used this for a very long time, 2 years before the fuse fire came out, or at least a year. This thing, I'll never ever get over it. If this breaks, I'm gonna cry. I think I have another set of internals in there. In fact, I'm pretty sure I do, but I don't have another blaster. I just have another set of internals from one that we found that was broken. I can't remember what was broken about it. I'm gonna have to edit this down a lot, but the Diatron, I love it. It's an amazing blaster. I know Bobo hates it. I know a lot of people hated it, and honestly, it seemed really hypocritical to me that people did not like this thing. But this was, bar none, the best blaster from the Vortex line I ever had. I love the fuse fire, but this was better. The Vortex Diatron. Speaking of fuse fire, if you want to see my review of that, it is going to be right here. And of course, if you want to see another episode of Tag Back that has nothing to do with Vortex, well, there's more of those right here. And of course, if you want to see more episodes of Tag Back, you can just hit the subscribe button. You'll see one every week. But wait, we've seen multiple this week, and that's because it's the week of Tag Back. So we still got a couple more to go, so if you're watching this, it's not going to be a Monday, it's going to be probably some other day. But that's the point. It's the week of Tag Back. And we've got a couple more blasters to talk about this week, so let me know what you think down in the comment box below, and go ahead and hit that like button if you think that the Diatron was tried unjustly, as such as I think. I'm Walcom S7, thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope to see you in an entirely different one.